Hello and welcome to the fourth part of the Simple Character Controller tutorial. In this part, we will be adding the ability to jump and refactoring our code to improve its efficiency. Let's start by adding the jumping functionality first. To do this, we will first open up the character motor script. Now, first off, we will need a variable to allow us to choose how much of force the jump has. This variable can either be a float or an int, but in this case, I'll be using a float in case precision is required while tweaking the value. So let's just go ahead and call it jump force. And I'm using a default value of 6 because I found that this value worked quite well while preparing this tutorial, but as always, you can use whichever value you want. It doesn't really matter. We will also probably change the value of the gravity later on, since the jump will be affected by the gravitational pull, but for now, let's just go ahead and make the player be able to jump. In order for the player to jump, we will first need an input from him. For this, we will be using Unity's built-in input class as always, which will tell us if a button has been pressed or not. As for the button, we will be using the spacebar. It's obviously the most common button used for jumping in games, so we will be just using that one. So to do this, it's just input.getKeyDown, and in here we just go keycode.space. Keep in mind, in this case, we were using getKeyDown instead of getKey, right? The other function. The reason for this is that getKey function tells us if a button is being held, and we only need to know if it has been pressed. So we're using this one. Now that we have this information, we can check whether this frame, the button, was pressed or not, and update the controller's movement direction based on that. Given that we only care about jumping, we'll only change the Y value. We will also be doing this inside of the grounded brackets, mainly because we want to avoid a bug in which the player would be able to jump while being in the air. So to do this, we'll just say if the player pressed the jump button, then we will change the movement direction on the Y-axis by jump force. Now, let's test it. Let's first make sure that everything is fine. Oh, let me just quickly add this here. I had actually changed these a bit, but there's no problem about it. Quickly just add it. Let me just set the speed to 1, for example. And those are fine. So let's press play. And when we press space, the player does indeed jump, but the jump is way too high. This is due to the gravity value being too small. Let's try setting the gravity to 10. Let's press play again. Right. As you can see, that was a little better, but we're having another problem. The player's jump seems to happen really damn fast, and doesn't have any kind of smoothing as we would like it to have. Now, to fix this, we will go back to the character motor, and in here, we will go ahead and multiply the movement direction by the fixed delta time value. This will make our movement a lot smoother. The only side effect of doing this is that our movement speeds will need to be tweaked again, but that doesn't really matter that much. So let's just go ahead and see. Now you will probably need to set the speed value a lot higher. Let's set it to something like 5. There's no need to change the running value since it's a multiplier, so that's fine. Now let's test it. So now, when we jump, as you can see, the jump looks smooth. We can jump while walking. Everything seems fine. As you can see. Now that we're done with this, we're gonna move on to the second part of the tutorial. And in this part, we're actually going to be refactoring the code a little bit, since we're doing a lot of actions that we don't really need to do. Things like checking for input in every single script. And this is mainly a problem because, as you can see, we're checking inputs in fixed update in here, and in here we're actually checking them in late update. So the better way to do this is to actually just do this in one single function, and that function is going to be update. So we're going to be doing all the input checking in one single script, and all other scripts will just get their inputs from there. So to do this, we will just start by creating a new script. Now we're going to call this script input manager. Pretty self-explanatory. And this is the script that's going to handle all the input. Let me just quickly delete. Now we'll need the update function, and aside from the update function, we're also going to need a variable for each input. So as you can see, we have horizontal, vertical, which are floats, jump, run, and then in here we have our mouse X and mouse Y. So let's go ahead and just add a variable for each of them. They need to be public as well, because we're going to be setting the value in here, but we're going to be using it in other scripts. So let's start with running is running, public bool jump, public float horizontal, public float vertical, and now we need the camera values, so mouse X and public float mouse Y. Right, now that we have all these, what we're going to do is just straight up get the inputs from here, and then just cut them from here and paste them here. And instead of using these private values, we're just going to assign them to the public variables we have. So just like that. Jump, and we're going to need for the run. Don't worry about the errors for now. We're going to be fixing that. And this is going to be is running equal to this. Alright, and now we just need the two camera values, which we can just take from here. So mouse X is equal to this, and mouse Y is equal to this. Now, don't worry that the fact that we have a mouse X and a mouse Y private values doesn't really affect this, since these are angles. Now, the ones here are just going to be the actual input from -1 to 1, and then we're still going to be using these. Mouse Y is equal to this. Right, now we have all this. Now, the only problem that's left is the fact that this script needs to be accessed by all the other scripts. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, but we will be leaving the more correct way for another tutorial, since it's a bit of a harder topic to do. But for now, we're just going to be adding it here. We'll just add it under the character motor, and just save that. Don't worry about the errors again. So now that we've added that, we need to get access to it. So just as we did with the character controller script, we're just gonna add a private variable called input manager, and I'm just gonna call this one input, and we'll get a reference just the same way. Input is get component input manager. Right. So now that we have that, and we just use it for all our inputs. So input.horizontal, and in here input.vertical, input.jump, input.is running, and same thing in here. Well, the only difference is going to be that in here, we're not really going to be just doing get component, since this script is actually positioned here, and the component is not on the same object. You need to do get component and parent in order for this script to get the component from here, which is its parent. So, let's do that. And input is get component in parent, and that component is still input manager. And now in here, we're just going to be doing input.mouse X and input.mouse Y. And let's check. Let's make sure everything works. Right. We don't really need this. Let's save. Let's press play. make sure that everything works. And as you can see, everything still works. And this is a better way to do input. Now in the next tutorial we'll be doing more advanced stuff. So this will be the last tutorial in the simple character controller tutorial series. So yeah, that's about it. I hope I'll see you in the next one, and for now just leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe. That would help a lot. So see ya.